This is the third part of our full guided tour video, and you can watch parts 1 and 2 by selecting the VG&M Guided Tours at Home playlist on our YouTube channel. In this video, Michelle will be providing more detail about the history of the second and third floors, and I will be showing you some of the architectural features in these areas of the building.
The Art Theatre, as it was originally called, seated up to 500 people and was used for smoking concerts, elaborate soirees, student councils, plays, guild meetings, public lectures, and degree ceremonies. Gerald Rendell was the first principal of the college and provided input into the design of the building, which also allowed the theatre to be adapted for examinations. The cubic blocks on the second, fourth and sixth tiered rows could be removed to form platforms for tables and chairs.
It was also used for degree ceremonies, public lectures and plays. Elsie Neal, who was a student from 1912 to 1915, stated the following: "As an amphitheatre, it was especially suitable for Greek drama, but it also had an inner stage, usually closed off by folding doors, which would have made it possible for an Elizabethan-type Shakespearean production. I remember the presentation of Iphigenia in Tauris, which is considered as a Greek romance, melodrama or tragicomedy." She also recalls that in 1912, the sound of jazz and Alexander's Ragtime Band first reached the university, played by a group of students in the Art Theatre during a social. Frank William Wallbank, lecturer in Latin during the mid-1930s, recalls another Greek play in the Arts Theatre during 1939. A group of faculty staff and students put on Agamemnon and recalls how the professor of English literature played the character of Agamemnon, who had entered the theatre installed on a chariot, which was in reality a disguised wagon kindly loaned by the station master at Lime Street Station, who was rewarded with complimentary tickets.
The Art Theatre was renamed to the Jack Leggett Lecture Theatre in 1990 in memory of the former Dean of the Faculty of Medicine 1953 to 1969. In 1990, the platforms were removed so that the wooden chairs from the Surgery Lecture Theatre could be reused, and the Liverpool Medical Students' Society held their meetings in this lecture theatre from 1990 to 2006. The refurbishment of the theatre for the 2008 reopening of the VG&M cost £1.2 million, and today this space is regularly used by the university for film screenings, music concerts, conferences, lectures and weddings.
There have been a few changes to the lecture theatre since 1892. There's no longer a balcony rail leading from the third floor into the top of the lecture space, and the seating was renovated and replaced for the 2008 opening. The coffered ceiling is reminiscent of an oak Tudor ceiling, so very much in keeping with the Gothic style in this part of the building, and originally part of it would have been made out of glass to let in natural light. For the 2008 renovations, this section was covered and electric lights have been added to this part of the ceiling, so that air handling units and wiring can be added to this upper section of the lecture theatre. We have added in modern equipment such as drop-down screens and audio visuals for lectures and conferences, and all of the curtains are electronic. A large piano also lives behind the folding doors that connect to the main room to the smaller anteroom. This is originally where the stage would have been kept, and we can still see grooves in the floor where it would have been pushed in and out of the space, and was mentioned in Elsie Neal's story from 1915. Today we can accommodate around 230 people in this space, as the upper balcony is no longer in use for members of the public. We'll now move towards the Tate Hall Museum, which is also on the second floor, and pass by the lift shaft, which was cut into the clock tower part of the building. For 2008 we required a lift access to all floors, and this was the only viable location, which meant that the original entrance doors on Brownlow Hill were closed, a new entrance was opened on Ashton Street, and the lift shaft was installed in this section of the building. Our glass lift enables you to see the different areas as you move from the ground floor up to the second floor.
Originally designed as the library for University College Liverpool, this space was funded by and named after the sugar merchant and philanthropist Henry Tate of Tate Hall. His generous donations included £20,000 for the construction of this part of the building, and he also gave a further £5,000 for his books. The bays on the left of the room were used by professors, while the ones on the right were used by students. This room could hold up to 80,000 volumes, but by 1938 the library was moved to the Harold Cohen Library, which could better accommodate the students of a rapidly expanding university. The following account tells us what the library was like in its heyday.
Sir, I am one of those misguided mortals who thinks they can work in the Tate Library. You go there shortly after 10. All is then peaceful, though the atmosphere is clammy and cold. Shivering slightly, you open your books in a side alcove. In a few minutes your work is disturbed by the sounds of revelry. A group of merry yokels come bounding along. Other sounds not far off compel your attention, the laughter of fair maidens who run up and down the library for exercise. You return in the afternoon, hoping for better things. The light becomes dim, the electric light has wretched illumination, there are powerful draughts and cold. Later on, when the merry yokels and playful damsels have gone home...
Please, sir, we're going to close the library now.
From Imaginary Worker.
In one of our other videos for Gallery 1, we discovered that balconising was a term between male and female students who would converse on several of the balconies throughout this building, and it also seems that the Tate Library was another place where people would meet romantically. William Garman Jones was a student between 1904 to 1908, and during his student days was having a flirtation in one of the niches of the Tate when Samson, the librarian, appeared like an avenging angel and drove Garman and his partner out of their paradise. Garman Jones actually succeeded Samson as the librarian, and in 1939 the professor of Greek, Archie Y. Campbell, wrote a poem called Nympholepsy, but had accidentally called it Nymphomania. He tried to correct this in one of the Tate Library books. Garman Jones, recognising the handwriting, threatened to denounce Campbell to the Senate as a defacer of library books, and so it seems Garman Jones became the avenging angel that Samson had once been.
After the library moved to the Harold Cohen, this space was used for numerous functions, including council meetings, exhibitions, and as an examination hall. Many past students remember taking their finals in this space right up to the mid-2000s, and some can even remember where they sat. Today, the Tate Hall Museum has been set out in a way that imitates the room's earlier life as a library and has different sections for different subjects. Our collection is made up of objects that have been collected by different university departments since the late 1800s and includes exhibitions on dentistry, archaeology, and natural history.
If you look up at the ceiling, you can see that the beams have been cut out. Originally there was a cross-beam roof, but the beams were removed just after the Second World War, although we're not entirely sure why. There have been many theories, such as to let in more light to this dark room, or perhaps the bomb blast had caused some damage to our roof as well as the Thomson Yates and Harrison Hughes buildings. Steel tie beams now ensure that the roof space is secure, and we do have some photographs that show what this space used to look like when the original beams were in place. Today you can see that the two individual crests that have been added to the ends of the horizontal tie beams depict the University of Liverpool crest and the Tate family crest. The red rose of Lancaster has also been added to the section where the vertical king posts used to be, because up until 1974 Liverpool was part of Lancashire. All of the library fittings and the second storey that ran around the walls were removed in the 1930s. And all that remains are some blocked-in doorways and a recess where the spiral staircase used to be. The two clocks that were in this room and the lecture theatre have also long since disappeared, but they had originally all hooked up to the main clock tower. This is a little sneaky peek at the area that is usually out of bounds on guided tours. You can see the blocked-in doorways from the Tate Hall museum space. These areas would have been where the bookshelves recessed into the roof, and when the staircase and balcony was taken away from the library, these doorways were blocked over, but I can now show you what's behind them today. The shelves would have come into these alcoves, but the space is now reserved for lighting, wires and things that we need for the museum, so only contractors and staff ever need to access this dark little area. This room is once again a space which depicts the Gothic Revival style, with its pointed arches, a steep sloping roof, decorative tracery on the windows and medieval motifs. The third floor is usually out of bounds for visitors, but today I'm going to show you another sneaky peek around the clock tower.
The clock and bells located in the Jubilee Tower were the gift of William Hartley, the jam manufacturer. The setting in motion of the clock was undertaken by Hartley at an opening ceremony on the 15th of November 1892. Professor Campbell Brown from chemistry advised on synchronising the clock dials in the entrance hall, lecture theatre and Tate Library with the main clock in the tower. The guests at the ceremony waited to see the synchronisation in the Tate Library just before 5 p.m. In 1897, the clock tower was also used by Professor Oliver Lodge to send the world's first long-distance radio message to his assistant on the roof of the Lewis's store, which was half a mile away in the city centre. He often sent radio signals to his home from the clock tower, which caused complaints as it set off local telephones. Our bells chime on the quarter of the hour, known as Westminster Quarter, which consists of the notes E, C, D and G in various combinations.
The bells were cast by Taylor of Loughborough, and each of the 5 bells is inscribed with a line from Tennyson's In Memoriam. Ring out the old at the 1:15, ring in the new at 1/2, ring in the false at 1:45, ring in the true on the hour, and ring in the Christ that is to be on the hour. During World War II, the clock tower was used as the main observation post for fire watching. Sighting instruments were installed on the balcony near the clock, and charts were in the clock tower room. The post was in contact with the fire headquarters in Hatton Garden. Fire watchers were students and staff volunteers, and 4 people were on duty each night. When the siren sounded, 2 fire watchers would climb the clock tower and report where the fires were. Dr. S.J. Kennett's official logbook details what happened to the Harrison Hughes building on Thursday the 13th of March 1941 at 1:45 a.m. Our last remaining research student was on the tower during an otherwise uneventful night when a parachute mine drifted past the tower and came to rest at the foot of the Harrison Hughes Engineering Building. The disbelief of the squad below when this event was reported on the intercom saved their lives, since when they eventually decided to investigate, they were only approaching the door leading out to the quadrangle when the mine exploded, destroying that corner of the laboratories.
Today, our clock tower is accessible only to staff and contractors who need to work on the clock mechanism. As you can see, we still have the original wooden staircase leading up to the very top. The clock mechanism was made by Leeds clockmakers, William Potts and Sons, and would have originally been wound by hand, but it was fitted with electricity many years ago. The bells were originally lifted up through the Jubilee clock tower, up a similar route to the current lift shaft, and then through these wooden trap doors. They now reside up in the bell tower, which is too difficult to access without appropriate health and safety equipment. Outside the door are stunning views of Liverpool city centre, including the 2 cathedrals and looking all the way down to the River Mersey. The third floor is now home to our staff offices, but was originally used for teaching subjects including English and art when the building first opened. Some of the offices still have their original features, such as fireplaces and stained glass windows, and in the 2008 renovation it was as sympathetic as it could be while transforming the Victoria building into a gallery and museum, while still maintaining the original character of the building.
We hope that you've enjoyed this tour around the VG&M, and we hope to see you at one of our volunteer-led tours. Each of our tours is slightly different and unique, as all of our wonderful volunteers have their own interests, so you'll always find out something new. This was just a short introduction to the history and architectural features of the Victoria building.
We also have some detailed videos on our YouTube channel that tell you more about the history and different areas of the building. So if you'd like to know more, please go and visit our channel. Don't forget to have a look on the VG&M website too for all of our current exhibitions if you can't visit us in person. Thank you for watching. We hope to see you at the VG&M very soon.